Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and answer one of the questions that was presented on one of my videos a few days ago. And this one came from a woman who was stationed, I believe she said, in Olongapo before. And she wanted to know, she's really thinking about moving to the Philippines. And her question is, how do you make friends? How do you find some social connections when you've never been there before? And you're thinking about moving there, and obviously none of us want to move somewhere new and then not have anyone to hang out with or whatever. So I'll give you some tips that I think can help you with this. Now, I have to say that I was very fortunate or blessed when I moved to the Philippines, because I was a missionary and there was really already a team over there that was waiting for me. And that team included a couple of really excellent mentors. So it's not really something that I had to deal with, because I had this team that was a mixture of Americans and American missionaries and Filipinos. From the moment that I arrived there, it was already a kind of a ready-made barkada. If you're not familiar with the term, a barkada is a group of friends. So if you're coming to the Philippines and you don't have this, I can make a few suggestions on before you get there and after you get there. Before you go somewhere, if you know where you're going to move, like let's say you're going to move back to Olongapo, then what you may want to do is get online, and you can go to, I think there's a forum called expats.com or expat.com, something like that. Another forum that you may want to check out, there's a website, Bob Martin does a website called liveinthephilippines.com, and I believe there's a forum associated with his website. But if you want, you can get on some of these forums and just introduce yourself to a few people, and that way maybe you can have some at least some expat connections wherever you're going. Now, I will say this, especially if you're going to a place like Angeles City, Olongapo may even be this way. If you're moving to the Philippines as an expat, American expat female, you're going to be really outnumbered by the guys. Most of the expats you see, for example, in Angeles City are men. But anyway, that's cool. I mean, you probably already know that. So get online and see, maybe even Facebook groups. See if you can make some connections before you arrive in the Philippines. Now, I'm not saying that all expats are great and wonderful and honest and the kind of people that you want to hang out with. Some of them will be, some of them will not be. But if you can find just one, really just one person, just one family that is open to connecting with you, that can be a really valuable resource. And one nice thing about expats or missionaries, if you can find one who's very well adjusted, they really can probably teach you better than anyone about some things to be aware of. The funny thing is, Filipinos sometimes are not as good as expats in terms of teaching you the culture. And the reason for that is Filipinos, obviously, they've grown up in the Philippines and they do things culturally kind of automatically, whereas an expat or a missionary recognizes these things and can tell you about them. So just as an example, Filipinos point with their lips. They point at something, and they don't know necessarily that you don't do that in other parts of the world. So in other words, there are a lot of things that someone who has more of an outside perspective can help you with. So if you can just find one trustworthy expat or expat family who's willing to show you the ropes, so to speak, that can be really helpful. Now, in terms of once you arrive in the Philippines, you may want to watch the video that I did about avoiding scams, because one thing I say about scams in the Philippines is it's not that Filipinos are largely dishonest people. Most of them are really honest, hardworking people. But one thing you have to watch out for is people that will just come up to you and approach you are the kind of people you may need to be cautious about in some settings. And it's the same in the U.S. I mean, if you're walking down the street and somebody says, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" you know something's up. So just meeting people randomly, you do have to use some caution. But otherwise, another thing I'll say is when you get into the Philippines, if you can find I don't know what your religious inclinations are or spiritual inclinations, but if you can find a church that has at least a few expats in it, kind of an international style church, that can be a huge asset to you, because what I have found is when you find people that are really regularly involved in a church, they're usually not the dishonest creeper type. And another thing that I found is when I was particularly in Angeles City, I met some pretty good friends at the gym. And I'm not saying these people all have the same kind of lifestyle that I have, but I met some pretty nice people there that lived in the Philippines or whatever, and some of those people I've kept up with to this day. So the gym is another good place. Another thing, if you can just find whatever hobby you happen to be into, hobbies, clubs, that kind of thing, you can meet people that way, both Filipinos and expats. The one thing I would encourage you to do is when you move to the Philippines, especially when when you were in the military, I'm guessing to a certain extent, your life may have been kind of in a bubble, so to speak. A lot of it was wrapped up into what happened there at the military base. And I have encouraged you to make some expat friends, but be sure that you don't surround yourself with so many expats that you don't taste the local culture, so to speak. Be sure that you slowly but surely make some Filipino friends, because why move to the Philippines and just hang out with other Westerners? That doesn't make sense to me. One thing I'll say here in closing, the longer I stayed in the Philippines, like especially I'm thinking about my last few years in Manila before I moved to Angeles City, the longer you stay in the Philippines, especially if you become really well adjusted, especially if you learn some language or something, the less need you're going to have maybe for interaction with other expats. My last few years in Manila, I lived in the heart of Manila, and it was not unusual for me to go days without seeing another American, and it didn't bother me at all because I had good Filipino friends. So anyway, hopefully this has helped you, and I hope you'll keep in touch. And whenever you move to the Philippines, let me know how it goes. I really hope that you find some people you can trust and connect with.